So in today's class, we will discuss about the kinetics of unimolecular reactions. Okay, and the reactions are only those which are taking place in gas phase. Later, we will discuss about unimolecular surface reactions, which is an entirely different topic from this. So this unimolecular reaction is only restricted to reactions taking place in gas phase. Okay, so first let us define what is a unimolecular reaction. As you already know, a unimolecular reaction is a reaction which involves only one type of molecules or one molecule of the reactant. Okay, I have given some example for unimolecular reaction. The isomerization of cyclopropane to propylene is an example for a unimolecular reaction. So in that case, you can consider any cis to trans isomerization, conversion of a cis isomer into trans isomer or vice versa may be considered as a unimolecular reaction. Other example for unimolecular reaction are dissociation of bromine, okay, to give bromine radicals, okay, is also an example. Or you can consider the decomposition of sulfuryl chloride or thionyl chloride, SO2Cl2, decomposing to give SO2 plus Cl2. So most of the isomerization reactions or the decomposition reactions taking place only in the gas phase, okay, taking place in the bulk phase, not on the surface of any solid or the vessel. It is purely taking place in the gas phase. Okay, so such reactions are called unimolecular reactions in gas phase. Now to interpret the kinetics of unimolecular reaction is rather a tedious task. Okay, so different theories were proposed to explain the kinetic behavior of a unimolecular reaction. There was always difficulty in the interpretation of the kinetics of a unimolecular reaction, both experimentally as well as theoretically. Theoretically, some of the scientists argued that the reaction should be a first order reaction. A unimolecular reaction should be a first order reaction, while a few of them argued that it should follow a second order mechanism or second order kinetics. And also experimentally, okay, the experimental results were difficult to interpret because a particular unimolecular reaction may show both first order as well as second order kinetics depending on the reactant concentration. At a particular reactant concentration, the reaction followed a first order reaction, whereas at a particular reactant concentration it followed a second order reaction. A typical uncharacteristic of any chemical reaction, because in the previous discussions that we had about the chemical reaction, the reaction generally follows a fixed order. If it is a first order, it is a first order. If it is a second order, it is always a second order. But here what we are seeing is the order of the reaction depends on the experimental condition. So the understanding the way these unimolecular reactions proceed, okay, that is proposing a theory for a unimolecular reaction is itself a very challenging task. So different theories were proposed. Okay, earlier in the earlier stage, one of the scientists called Perrin, okay, he proposed a very simple model for the unimolecular reaction. Okay, of course it is an outdated theory. It is not experimentally proven, but it is the first way, okay, where he proposed a simple mechanism for how the reaction takes place, and he argued that it should be a first order reaction. Okay, but it was not experimentally proven. The first, okay, recorded mechanism or the theory that was provided was by uh, mm, I'm sorry, it was provided by Langmuir. Okay, so that sorry, the Lindemann. The first theory was proposed by Lindemann, and therefore the mechanism is called as a Lindemann mechanism of unimolecular reaction. Okay, so though Lindemann theory was able, okay, in explaining this observed experimental fact that a reaction becomes first order under certain conditions and becomes second order under certain conditions. So though it achieved in its success in explaining this experimental observation, it had certain limitations, and this theory proposed by Lindemann was modified by Hinshelwood. Okay, and we proposed a modified mechanism which we call as Hinshelwood mechanism. Okay, there are other theories called as RRK theories, RRKM theories, which are the higher versions or the latest version of unimolecular reactions. So there are different versions for the theories of unimolecular reaction. We will concentrate on the two of the important mechanisms or theories, that is Lindemann's theory of unimolecular reaction and Hinshelwood theory of unimolecular reaction. So today we will discuss about the Lindemann's theory, how Lindemann explained a unimolecular reaction, how it proceeds. Okay, and he explained the kinetics of the unimolecular reaction. But before going to study the Lindemann's theory, let us lightly look into the theory that was proposed by Perrin. Okay, so what Perrin proposed was an hypothesis called as a radiation hypothesis. Okay, Perrin argued that a unimolecular reaction is actually a first order reaction. Now the first question arises is why there is an ambiguity about the order of a unimolecular reaction. Okay, why there is an ambiguity between the scientists, why certain scientists argue that it should be first order, and certain scientists argue that it is a second order. So first let us understand the Perrin's argument. Okay, so Perrin was the first person in 1919, okay, who proposed an hypothesis called radiation hypothesis. Okay, so according to Perrin, collision is not a factor, or it is not a mode through which the reactant molecules get activated or get sufficient energy required for the reaction. Okay, we all know that for a reaction to proceed, the molecule should attain a minimum extra energy called as activation energy. So the molecule should first get activated, and once the molecule gets activated, it can participate in the chemical reaction, it can proceed to form products. So, and what is the best mode through which a molecule can get activated? It is by collision. So when the two reactant molecules collide, there is an exchange of energy between the molecules, and the one which gains energy starts getting activated. So when such molecule, okay, collides again and again, okay, it gathers energy each time, and at a certain stage it becomes activated. So this is the mode through which the molecules get activated in a chemical reaction, that is by collision. But when the by collision, so if we assume that the collision is the mode through which the molecules get activated, what does it mean is the frequency of collision should be directly proportional to the square of the concentration of the reactant. Or if we are, since we are speaking in gas phase, instead of using the word concentration of the reactant, I can also call it as pressure of the reactant, because the reaction is taking place in gas phase. So for a collision to take place, at least there should be two molecules colliding with each other. So the collision frequency should depend on the concentration of the two molecules. In this case, the two molecules are same. Okay, both molecules are A. So the rate, or the frequency of collision should be directly proportional to the square of the pressure or square of the concentration of the reactant molecule. So in such case, the reaction should become second order. That is why certain scientists argued that unimolecular reaction should be a second order. Why? Because for the collision to take place, that is for the molecule to get activated, at least two molecules should collide. Okay, so two molecules should collide. So rate of the reaction is directly proportional to collision frequency, and collision frequency should be directly proportional to the square of the concentration, because two molecules are colliding. So certain scientists argued that it should be a second order kinetics, but what did Perrin argue that it should be a first order kinetics. So there was no background or basis why he argued that it should be a first order kinetics. So without any experimental background or without any justification, he simply argued that it should be following a first order kinetics. So if a unimolecular reaction follows a first order kinetics, then collision is definitely not the mode through which the molecule gets activated. What did Perrin suggest is that the reactant molecule in such case gets activated by absorbing the radiation through the reaction vessel. Okay, so if we have a reaction vessel, you have molecules of A. Okay, suppose if the reaction is A giving product, which is a unimolecular reaction, so you have molecules of A present in the bulk, that is in the gas phase within this vessel. So this, according to him, the molecules are getting activated not through the collision, but they are getting activated by absorbing the radiation that is emitted by the surface of this vessel. So the surface of these vessels, okay, absorb radiation from the environment and they re-emit it back. So those radiations that are emitted by the walls of this container, okay, it is absorbed by the reactant molecules A and they are so getting activated. So according to Perrin, the mode of activation of the reactant molecule is not through collision, but rather it is through absorption of radiation. That is why this hypothesis is called as radiation hypothesis. So he argued that if the volume of this vessel is increased, what happens to the distance between the reactant molecules? Okay, if I increase the volume, keeping the number of reactant molecules same, that is concentration of the reactant molecules same, so increasing the volume automatically increases the distance between A molecules, which means that the collision frequency should also reduce, because the distance between the molecules has increased, the collision should also reduce, and therefore rate of the reaction should also reduce. But what Perrin proposed that even if I increase the volume of the container, there should not be any effect on the rate of the reaction, because the molecules are getting activated by absorbing the radiation emitted by the glass vessels and not by collision. So increasing the volume of the glass vessel will not influence the activation of the molecule, because this activation is not through collision, it is rather by absorption of radiation. So the rate of the reaction will not be influenced by increasing the volume of the container. But his argument was not experimentally proved, so it clearly suggested that this Perrin's idea or hypothesis is not the correct way of interpreting the kinetics of unimolecular reactions. So the alternative explanation that was given by others is that the molecule is getting activated by collision, and since at least two molecules of A are involved in the collision, the rate of the reaction should be directly proportional to concentration of the reactant square, because two molecules are involved, so the rate of the reaction should be a second order. That is the alternative way of explaining the unimolecular reaction. So Perrin argued that it should be first order, whereas some of the others argued that it should be the second order. As I already told you, experimentally a unimolecular reaction shows both first order as well as second order kinetics depending on the experimental condition, that is the reactant concentration. So this clearly suggested that this simple model for unimolecular reaction does not work well. So Lindemann, he proposed a very simple mechanism for explaining the kinetics of unimolecular reaction. So this is a very simple explanation, but it is a very important, though it has certain limitation, it is considered as an important mechanism, because it is the starting point for the development of the other modern mechanisms that we have now. Okay, so the modern theory of unimolecular reaction is nothing but a modified version of Lindemann's theory. So that is why Lindemann's theory of unimolecular reaction, though it is not the perfect way of describing a unimolecular reaction, but still it is the one of the best way of describing a unimolecular reaction. So first let us study today what is the Lindemann's theory of unimolecular reaction. Okay, suppose if I have a reaction, a unimolecular reaction, A giving P. What it Lindemann suggests is a simple mechanism. According to Lindemann, two normal molecules of A. Okay, so these are the normal molecules of A. Okay, what do you mean by normal molecule? These molecules are having energy which is very close to the average energy of the system. Okay, if the molecule is having very less energy than the average energy, or if it is having much higher energy than the average energy, they are not normal molecules. Okay, the normal molecules means it is having almost energy closer to the average energy. Okay, so two normal molecules of A collide with each other, and when they collide, there is an exchange of energy from one molecule to another molecule. So one of the molecules which gains energy becomes energized. So this is an energized molecule of A, okay, which has gained energy. The other molecule actually loses energy, but when that molecule subsequently collides with another molecule of A, it will again regain that energy and become a normal molecule. So I simply write it as A. Okay, so A star represents energized molecule, A represents a normal molecule. Okay, you may ask, sir, this how can this be a normal molecule? It has very less energy because it has lost energy now. How can it be a normal molecule? Yes, you are right. It has lost some energy to this molecule, but it has regained that energy back by colliding with another molecule of A, because in the reaction vessel you have so many molecules. So this molecule has gained its energy back by colliding with the other molecule. So this has become normal again. Okay, now this A star which is energized, okay, it is relatively less stable compared to normal molecule. So there is a probability that it may lose its energy back. Okay, you have an energized molecule of A, and also in the neighborhood you have the normal molecules or molecules which is having very less energy. Okay, so when this energized molecule collides with this normal molecule or a molecule having less energy, this energized molecule may again lose its energy and become normal. So the reverse process is also possible. Okay, so this is not a chemical reaction, it is just a physical process and energy transfer process. So the forward step is an energization step where you get an energized molecule. The reverse of this is a de-energization step where an energized molecule may on collision with a normal molecule lose its energy back and become a normal molecule. So this is the first step of the Lindemann's theory. Okay, let us assign the rate constant. K1 is the rate constant for the energization. K minus 1 is the rate constant for the de-energization step. Alternatively, this energized molecule, instead of getting de-energized, okay, it may decompose. If it is a decomposition reaction, it may decompose, or it may get isomerized. If the reaction is an isomerization reaction, then this energized molecule may get isomerized and get converted into product. Okay, so this is the product formation reaction. Okay, where K2 represents the rate constant of the step which involves the formation of the product. Okay, this is the second step. Now, what did Lindemann assume is that when the molecule gets energized, okay, the kinetic energy of the normal molecule is converted into vibrational energy. The kinetic energy of the normal molecule A is converted or transferred, okay, into the vibrational energy of the energized molecule. Okay, so this is very important. What did he presume is that when two molecules of A collide, okay, there is an exchange of energy. Now, how this energy is exchanged between one molecule to another molecule? This is the normal molecule, this is another normal molecule. When the two molecules collide, there is an exchange of energy and this molecule becomes energized. Now, a molecule can possess different types of energy: kinetic energy, that is translation energy, or it may have more rotational energy, or the bonds present of, if my fingers represent different bonds present in the molecule, okay, they may be vibrating, okay, bonds may be bending, so it has vibrational energy. Or the electrons are revolving around each atoms in the nucleus, so it has electronic energy. So the energy of the molecule is manifested in different forms: kinetic energy, rotational energy, vibrational energy, and uh, electronic energy. So when we are saying the molecule is energized, it means it is moving from one energy level to another energy level. So which energy we are actually speaking about? So the answer to this given by Lindemann is the kinetic energy, that is the translational energy, because one molecule of A is moving and colliding with the another molecule of A. So the kinetic energy, that is the translation energy of one molecule, when it is transferred, it is transferred as the vibrational energy of the other molecule. So the other molecule is getting energized, means it is getting energized in terms of its vibrational energy. So there is a transition of the molecule into higher vibrational energy states. Okay, this explanation is rather significant. Why? Because if I consider a cis trans isomerization, okay, so you have some isomer which is converted as, okay, so you have some type of isomer, okay, which is converted into its okay, it is converted into its trans or cis. So if this conversion has to take place, you can clearly observe that a rotation around this CC bond should take place for this conversion, and the free rotation is not possible about the CC bond because it is a double bond. You all know that that whenever you have a double bond, the possibility of rotation about CC double bond is not allowed. So how this conversion takes place, that explanation is given by Lindemann. When the molecules of A collide, the kinetic energy of A is converted into vibrational energy. So what happens, this molecule starts vibrating with higher energy. Yakandre why? Because this molecule is now energized in terms of its vibration energy. It has jumped into higher vibrational energy state. So the molecule is now vibrating with a greater amplitude. So when the molecule is vibrating with a greater amplitude, this carbon carbon, okay, bond length, which is a short bond, double bond, now since it is vibrating with a greater amplitude, okay, it is almost behaving like a single bond. So at this higher energy state, there may be possibility that this CC single bond may rotate, okay, and then it may be easily converted to the trans or the cis isomer, whatever it is. So this point is very significant, that the kinetic energy of the molecule is transferred into the vibrational energy of the energized molecule. And he also assumed that there is a time lag, okay, so there is a time lag before this energized molecule A star is converted to product, and in this time lag, or gap, A star may be even decomposed. Okay, rather, no, instead of using this word decomposed, you can say it is de-energized. It is de-energized. That is, there is a sufficient time lag after the formation of A star. There is a time lag, okay, between the formation and formation of A star and the formation of the product. So in that time lag, this A star may lose its energy by getting de-energized. So these are the two important assumptions made by Lindemann. One is the kinetic energy of the molecule is converted to the vibrational energy of the energized molecule. Okay, so and there is a time gap between the formation of A star and between its conversion to product P, and in this time lag A star may be even de-energized. Because of collision, it may get de-energized or deactivated to form the original reactant. So these are the two important points or postulates of Lindemann's theory. Okay, so now let us go into some mathematical details of Lindemann's theory. Okay, now what is the rate of formation of product? Okay, the rate of formation of product, that is the rate of the second step, is rate is equal to rate constant into concentration of the reactant, that is A star. So if we know the concentration of A star, that is the concentration of the energized molecule, it is possible to find out the rate. So how to find out the concentration of A star? Okay, you know that A star is a energized molecule. Okay, it is a more reactive species compared to normal molecule of A star is more reactive, and it is short-lived, or it is less stable, and it is therefore short-lived. And if there is a short-lived species or a less stable species which is acting as an intermediate in a chemical reaction, the concentration of such species can be obtained by an approximate method called as a steady state approximation. Okay, so since A star is less stable than A, and since it is short-lived, okay, because it is highly reactive, once it is formed, it has to take a decision, it has to take a call, either it should form product or it should get de-energized and form the original reactant. So its decision is very fast, so that is less stable, and since it is short-lived, okay, the concentration of A star can be obtained by applying steady state approximation, which is abbreviated to SSA, steady state approximation. So what does the steady state approximation tell is, according to SSA, the net rate of formation of any short-lived species, okay, here I am concerned about A star, so the net rate of formation of A star should be 0. So the net rate of formation of the short-lived species, in this case it is A star, it should be equal to 0. That is, rate of the rate at which A star is formed should be equal to the rate at which it is decomposed, or with the rate at which it is reacting. Okay, what does it mean? Once an A star is formed, it has to immediately decide, without wasting any time. It has to decide whether it has to undergo the chemical reaction or whether it gets de-energized. So there is no sufficient time for it to decide. So either immediately it has to undergo a reaction or it has to undergo uh, de-energization. So at any instant of time, its concentration in the reaction mixture is very less, because either it is getting de-energized or it is forming product whenever it is formed in the reaction vessel. So the net rate of formation of A star should be equal to 0, or its concentration should be very less. So let us calculate. Okay, or I will write, that is rate of formation of A star should be equal to rate of disappearance of A star. So as soon as it is formed, it should disappear. Okay, so let us first calculate rate of formation of A star. The rate of formation of A star. Okay, let us look at this mechanism. There are three steps involved in the mechanism. The first step consists of two steps by itself, a forward as well as a reversible process. Okay, and this is the overall second step. So there are total three steps, and out of the three steps there is only one step, that is the forward process, where A star is formed. So rate of formation of A star is nothing but the rate of the forward reaction or the forward process in step 1. So it is K1 into concentration of A into A, that is concentration of A square. Now rate of disappearance of A star is, there are two steps in which A star is disappearing. Okay, if you look at the reversible process here, A star, okay, it is getting de-energized to form reaction molecule A. So in the reverse step, A star is getting consumed or disappearing. Similarly, in this step, A star is getting converted to product. So there are two steps in which A star is being consumed or it is disappearing. So the rate of disappearance of A star is the rate of the reverse step, which is K minus 1 into concentration of A star into concentration of A, plus the rate of the second step, that is K2 into A star. So the first equation represents the rate of formation of the energized molecule A star. The second step is the rate of disappearance of A star. Now let us equate these two, because according to steady state approximation, net rate of formation of A star is 0, or rate of formation should be equal to rate of disappearance. So let us equate those two equations. Okay, I will retain this mechanism for a while, okay, because I require it again. So therefore let us compare these two. K1 K minus 1 into A star into A plus K2 into A star is equal to K1 into A square. If I take A star as the common factor, so concentration of A star is taken as common, you get K minus 1 into concentration of A plus K2 is equal to K1 into concentration of A square. Therefore concentration of A star, okay, is K1 into A square divided by K minus 1 into A plus K2. So this is the expression for the concentration of A star, the energized molecule formed in the reaction. It is given by equation 1. Now let us calculate what is the rate of the reaction, that is rate of formation of product. Okay, so in the previous slide I had written what is the rate of the reaction, which is the rate of formation of product. So the rate of formation of product P is equal to, okay, product P is formed in this step and its rate is K2 into concentration of A star, K2 into concentration of A star. This is the rate of the second step, which is also the rate of formation of the product. So let us substitute equation 1 in equation 2. Therefore rate of the reaction is equal to, substitute here, it becomes K1 into K2 into A square divided by K minus 1 into A plus K2. So this is the expression for the rate of the reaction proposed by Lindemann. Now if you look at this equation and try to predict what should be the order of the reaction. Suppose if rate is equal to rate constant into concentration to the power 1 is your rate equation, then immediately you can say that it is a first order reaction. Suppose if the rate expression is like rate is equal to rate constant into concentration of A square, immediately you can say that it is a second order reaction. But if you look at this rate equation and try to predict what should be the order of the reaction, you see that it is very hard to predict what is the order of the reaction. Though you have a square of A in the numerator, you still have a square, concentration term in the denominator. So you clearly cannot assign an order to this particular reaction. So a unimolecular reaction as proposed by Lindemann follows a complex ordered kinetics. We cannot assign a simple order to this reaction. So in such case, when we cannot say what is the exact order or what is the definite order of the reaction, what we generally do in chemical kinetics is consider some limiting cases or two extreme cases. So here also let us consider two extreme cases. One case when the concentration of the reactant or the pressure of the reactant is very high. Okay, I can also use the word pressure because the reaction is in gas phase. So the first limiting case is what happens if the pressure or the concentration of the reactant is very high. The second limiting case is what would happen if the pressure or the concentration of the reactant is very low. Okay, so let us apply those two limiting cases.